Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ride the Stream. I am here with co-host Michelle Brittany. I am Travis Licata, and thank you for joining us. We are here to talk about season one, episode 15 of Lost. This is our first adventure into Ride the Stream. Lost has been an incredible way to dive into TV and movies, things that we love. And this episode originally aired February 9th, 2005, is titled Homecoming and features flashbacks from Charlie. Uh, Michelle, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Doing all right. I'm here in Arizona. We've got nice sunshine. Wishing for a little rain though. How about you there in Baltimore?
Doing pretty well. The kids had 2 days off this week, along with Megan, my wife, who's a teacher, so she was off as well. Still a lot of snow on the ground. It's cold, it's windy. Um, but doing not too bad. It's really windy, so I'm hoping the power doesn't go out. So this was a very tense episode of Lost. I'm definitely interested to get your feedback as the newbie of the group. Um, Everyone, if this is your first time watching, Michelle is new to Lost. She's been able to go many years without having any spoilers, which is fantastic. I've watched the series several times over, um, and getting your feedback, Michelle, is my favorite thing. I love hearing about your reactions because it also brings back, oh, I didn't even think about that, or oh yeah, or so it's a great way to kind of, I think, collaborate and break down Lost. And I hope anyone that's watching, uh, please, if you find us on YouTube and you want to join the conversation, drop comments. If there are any spoilers, just highlight it before any comments. Say spoiler above, so that way Michelle can be spoiler free moving forward. And yeah, this was again, I think we're gonna say this a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. Um, and is there anything that you want to highlight before we jump into the synopsis?
I'm sure. This was my second time taking a look after initially watching through to I think through episode 21 a couple months ago. So I'd actually kind of rewatching through as we discuss. So I know that I didn't remember any specifics about this episode. And I don't know if partly it was to shut out some of the cringy flashbacks that were very, very uncomfortable, especially since I've gotten to a point where I really like Charlie's character
Yeah.
and seeing some more flashbacks of when he was a junkie and he was being led by one of his friends on kind of capitalizing on his prior infamous band Drive Shaft and being a guitarist and how cool that is and all that type of stuff. Um, and then, of course, with Claire coming back and all the ramifications around that. And then
Yeah.
as we get going, I totally forgotten about Ethan. So we had creepy Ethan back, and oh man, the person that they got to play Ethan was a great casting, I have to say,
Totally.
because he is so imposing and has such a presence, and he just exudes evil every
He's a
time he's
scary
on the
dude.
screen. Yeah, really scary. Um, so I know I was taken aback by a lot of the things throughout the episode, either it just being uncomfortable, and seeing kind of a dear friend and their memories go through things, kind of relive past moments that are really challenging, paired with, of course, the actual physical threat that they had on the island through the manifestation of Ethan coming back to the camp and, you know, scaring the survivors and wanting something very specific. So, yeah, I was just like, oh, wow, wow. And then, of course, we've talked about the music over the last several episodes and just being more attentive to musical cues. Those were definitely present here between the very chaotic intro to the chimes of, quiet moments like between Jin and Sun, um, to, more dramatic music and sound effects during the climax. So just everything coming together very well. Um, the one other thing I'll comment that I hadn't noticed before, or maybe I had, and definitely wanted to comment this time, is that in the flashbacks, whoever wrote the dialogue of Charlie being very witty uh, and interacting with Lucy and the other ladies was some of the best banter that I've had the opportunity to watch. And I really thought just, you know,
So
self-effacing
charismatic.
Charlie's, yeah, and yet so charming, and I would have been a sucker. But yeah, it was fun to watch. What about you, Travis? I think you rewatched Lost like about 5, 6 years ago. Anything specific stand out for you before we jump into the synopsis?
Well, I do remember thinking as I was watching it again, it was almost like watching a thriller movie. Like you mentioned, the music is 100% like top of mind in this episode. I think it plays such a key role with you know, the environment that they're in, how much of an intense situation it is, and even the amplification of the sound effect of Ethan's weapon when he
Oh yes,
comes
the
upon,
whoosh whoosh whoosh.
yeah, it just like starts getting louder and louder and louder. So it's really impressive to have that type of feel on a TV show. Um, and if anyone is new to our show, if you're returning, our normal format is we kind of do a synopsis and then we kind of have a general discussion, but we have three questions. We do most interesting scene, favorite character, and then we'll have a third question kind of focusing on something else with this episode, which I might jump to the third question today first when we start with our questions. But yeah, I think this episode, the counterbalance is so wild with the discomfort of Charlie's past to the intensity of what's happening on the island now with, you know, basically trying to prevent Claire from being captured and anyone from getting murdered.
Yeah.
Because, because Ethan, comes back and says, "I'm going to kill someone, every day until he gets her back." So, it's very unnerving, to have such a swing because usually we'll have some lighthearted moments to counterbalance the intensity, and this one's like, well, the lighthearted moments also are twinged with like, oh, Charlie's being a you know swarmy kind of
Yeah.
trickster, and his friend is a total ugh.
Yeah.
Like,
Not a
so
good friend.
no, so yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway. When I was watching, I was like, man, it's like I'm in a theater watching this. So um, I'm definitely excited to get more of your first impressions of this episode. And I guess if you're ready, I can dive into the synopsis.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's see here. Let me get myself ready. After Claire emerges from the jungle, she collapses into Locke's arms, unconscious. Locke carries her to the caves where Jack tries to wake her up. When she does, an alarming reality hits everyone. She doesn't remember anything. Claire does not remember the plane crash, being abducted by Ethan, or where she's been for nearly 2 weeks since she's been taken. And she also doesn't remember her friendship and affection for Charlie. Charlie is the focus of this episode's flashbacks, where we watch as he and a very unsavory friend plan to manipulate a woman into a relationship so Charlie can steal some stuff and then sell it. And why do they need the money so badly? Because they're running out of whatever drugs they were snorting at the beginning of the show. Charlie quickly uses his charisma to earn the trust and heart of Lucy in a local pub. Charlie soon finds himself in the depths of a conundrum. He does have feelings for Lucy, even opening up to her and her father about Drive Shaft and how the band is over. But he still moves forward with stealing something. Lucy's father gets him a job as a salesman, but by the time he makes it to his first sales pitch, the severity of his drug withdrawals leads to him puking all over the copier he's trying to sell. When Charlie speaks to Lucy after his spell in the hospital, she confronts him about what he stole, and despite his claims of taking the job because he wanted to take care of her, she tells him, quote, "You'll never take care of anyone." Back to being stranded on the island, we see Charlie and Jen walking back to the caves when Jin eventually puts his hand in the air to indicate he hears some sort of sound in the distance. Unsure of where it's coming from, Jin is suddenly hit with a projectile and knocked unconscious. Charlie looks around before Ethan appears with scratches all over his face. He quickly stops Charlie's attack and picks him up by the neck, kind of reminiscent of when he was playing Mary and being picked up by the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. And of course, where would we be if Ethan didn't threaten to kill someone like he tried to kill Charlie? And fortunately, even though he threatens to kill everyone, he kind of highlights he's going to kill Charlie last. When Charlie brings this news back to the others, Jack and Charlie agree that Ethan needs to be hunted down and killed. But Locke points out that they are on Ethan's turf and they need a different plan. He says, what if Ethan isn't alone? He recommends sentries being stationed at night, and while Saeed builds a bunch of fires at 20-meter intervals, Boone and Locke set up several traps that will create a loud noise if someone penetrates their perimeter. We see Saeed standing watch near a fire, Locke walking with a wooden staff, and Boone holding a spear and knife before falling asleep. He wakens to the sound of a trap being tripped, but it's daylight already. He rushes through the jungle before falling and having Vincent, the dog, appear from the brush. Locke and Saeed find him, but they also hear the screams of a woman and rush to the beach to find a dead man on the sand. Locke soon realizes that the attack did not come from the jungle but from the water, which means their plan was never going to work. They decide to use Claire's bait, Ouch, which she does approve because despite not remembering anything, she doesn't want Ethan to hurt anyone else. Oh, and Jack decides now is the time to use the guns from the U.S. Marshal's briefcase, but he still insists on not putting it in the hands of someone untrained. Jack, Locke, Saeed, Sawyer, and Kate will keep Claire in their sights as she walks through the jungle. Ethan does appear, and Claire runs screaming. Jack comes to the rescue and tackles Ethan. Unlike the last fisticuffs with Ethan, Jack has the upper hand and gives him a serious beatdown. Everyone has him surrounded, but they don't shoot because they want him alive to question him. Well, that is until gunshots blast into Ethan's chest, killing him instantly. Charlie, where did you get the gun? And where did you learn to shoot? Later, Jack asks why he did it, and Charlie tells him that Ethan deserved to die, and he wasn't going to let him near Claire ever again. And although Claire approaches Charlie, to tell him she remembers peanut butter, she also tells him that she's scared and she does want to trust him. He did lie to her earlier in the episode when he didn't tell her about Ethan's return, but the main question will be, will her memory return? And whether or not it does return, will she appreciate that not only one episode earlier, that trust might ultimately be broken by the fact that he did read her diary?
Hmm.
And that is an episode.
There we go. Yes.
So, such a great episode because they tackle a lot of things. It's very intense, very uncomfortable in moments. How did you feel after watching this episode?
Well, when you mentioned the synopsis, a couple of things uh, I'm I'm remembering right off the bat, and that is that when Jack was starting to give out the guns, naturally he was going to take one, Locke was going to take one, Saeed was going to take one, and they needed a fourth person. And Charlie said that, he wanted to help. And Jack even out, so Jack asked him, "Have you even, shot a gun?" Well, Charlie never answers him. So later Locke says, "Hey, Charlie's right. We do need a fourth person. We need all hands on deck here."
Yep.
And so they actually go to Sawyer because they know he can shoot because he shot the polar bear in a much earlier episode. But um, Sawyer says, "Well, what's your ammo? Is it 9 millimeter?" And he pulls out the Marshall's gun, and actually gives it to Kate. So, he's aware that Kate can shoot. But nobody's aware of the fact that Charlie can actually shoot. Because if you see that cluster in Ethan's chest, Charlie's a ringer because he knows how to shoot. But you would have never thought it. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, no, you would never have guessed that.
no, never. Another thing that I was reminded of and I thought was very interesting was that Locke is adamant that he is not a cold person and that he feels the loss of the fellow out on the beach, Scott, um, that he feels that loss and that because he's not like Ethan, and this is Ethan's turf, they have to be very careful with their plans. And I thought that was very interesting. Um, and such a quick thing said because we've seen Locke be very cold. Um, and yeah, maybe the jungle is not his turf in comparison to Ethan, but Locke is probably the closest thing to understanding the jungle out of everybody on the island. So, yeah, he may not live there for years, like potentially Ethan has, but he definitely knows it. So, yeah, there was definitely those type of things too that I was picking up on. And just also thinking about the fact that while Claire has amnesia, Charlie doesn't. And maybe Charlie wishes he did because he's dealing with somebody who doesn't remember the affections that are kind of growing between them. And that's got to be hurtful. While at
Yeah.
the same time being reminded of the fact that he failed at taking care of her on his watch, so to speak, and bringing up these old memories of Lucy telling him that you'll never be able to take care of anybody,
Yeah.
because he's a junkie. I mean, and he's stealing and he's running cons with an unsavory friend. And, at that time, yeah, I mean, no, he definitely couldn't have taken care of anybody because he couldn't even take care of himself. But people change. And Charlie's being pretty hard on himself about it. Um, to the point that he hasn't completely learned from that earlier experience because he does lie to her. And then eventually the truth comes out that, you know, Ethan is back, even though she doesn't know, she doesn't remember anything about him. I think they probably could have talked to her. Um, it's good that, she chose that she wanted to be bait, because she didn't want anyone else to be hurt. So even though she
Yeah.
doesn't remember um, her experiences in captivity with Ethan and wherever she was, her base personality is still there. So, and she's always shown to be a caring person. So it's not surprising that she'd want to uh, put herself up as bait so that way they could grab Ethan.
Yeah, I
It
think that really
sucks.
does say a lot about her.
Yeah, it really sucks that Charlie did kill him. Um, but I would almost agree that Ethan probably would not give up anything. Um, did he deserve to die? No, but I also don't think they were going to get anything. So then they have a prisoner who's not going to, and you've got to be careful that he doesn't escape or that he doesn't kill you. Um,
Yeah.
so he was a dangerous element in the midst of the survivors. Um, but yeah, I'd forgotten about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, the fact that Charlie did do that. I was really like, wow. And just, sad that Claire doesn't remember him and things like that. You know, a lot of that came out in my first watching.
So, as we're in our like general discussion here, I want to bring up my third question because
Mhm.
I really want to know your perspective. My third question was going to be focusing on when Claire returns. There are so many characters who kind of question whether or not like she's in on it or she was let go on purpose,
Yeah.
and or people are like, are you like Charlie's like, are you mad like she escaped? Like, did you in that first moments in the episode when people are bringing that up, did you think, oh man, she might be like in on it, or Ethan might have let her go, or did you feel like, oh no, she definitely escaped and just can't remember?
It never came to my mind that she was planted back in amongst the survivors. I really truly believe that she has amnesia. The fact that her experience was so traumatic that she just shut all of that out. Um, yeah, I was right on the hook. I truly believed, right along with Charlie, that she was not there as a spy. She wasn't trying to gather intel for Ethan. I think Ethan was a very capable person. I didn't think he needed to use her for that. And then when he appeared and he had huge scratch marks on his face,
Yeah.
that kind of solidified that now she escaped. I mean, it seems kind of odd, given his strength, but who knows? We don't know if there are others, and maybe someone else decided let her go back, or doesn't agree with Ethan's um, methods of whatever his plan was, because we don't know if there's other people. So it does seem you do have to kind of wonder, but I honestly believe that she escaped and she truly has amnesia.
Yeah, I think Ethan kind of presents this episode almost like a no-win situation. Um, because no, he didn't deserve to die. And I think when I initially watched the episode for the first time way back when, I think I was kind of bummed that he was killed because I was like, oh, I would have loved to have seen if anything could have gotten
Yeah.
from him. But it also made me think a little bit more about Locke's character. And I know we talked about it, I think in the last episode, how his methods are can be quite harsh.
Mhm.
But it made me realize he's very thoughtful in his actions, even if those methods are harsh. Um, like when he hits Boone on the head, before he does that, he's there making that drugged up hypnotic paste to put on that wound.
Yeah.
So he's clearly thought about what he's going to do. And in this case, this week, Charlie and Jack, they seem to be uh, very reactionary. We got to do something about it. We've got to hunt him down. We got to kill him. And Locke's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We need a
Yeah.
plan. We can't just willy-nilly go into the jungle on Ethan's turf. And, we saw what happened last time. He mentions how Jack got his ass kicked last time and how
Hmm.
Charlie got literally hung up and was dead before Jack brought him back to life. Um, so in this episode, it made me realize that Locke is definitely a thinker. Um, and I appreciate how Jack kind of understands that Locke is trying to protect the group as a whole. And he points out, hey, we can't just all hole up in the cave because if Ethan isn't alone, then we're falling into their
Hmm.
plans of possibly picking everyone off in just one fell swoop. And I appreciate that in this moment, Jack's like, okay, John, you clearly have an idea. What is it? So
Hmm.
I like that there is some give and take there because I feel like Jack is like kind of a focus on one thing. He wants to go and do it regardless of what anyone else says. So this seems like one of the first instances that I can think of that he's like, oh, okay, John has a point.
Hmm.
He's making some sense. And what are we going to do about it? So I think those conversations were kind of Locke and Jack and Charlie and Saeed are kind of like intertwined and talking about plans. And I know Boone's in on some of those, but he Boone Boone just seems like
Boom.
he's just waiting to catch up, and we see him like fall in the jungle after he falls asleep, and so I kind of felt bad for Boone again in
Yeah.
this episode because he's just, he wants to be something so bad, whether it's a protector or provider or something, and it just
He wants to
seems like
be
more times than not.
validated as
Yeah,
well.
totally.
Like I noticed that when Locke and Saeed are talking, I really got the sense like they're the men of the group, and here comes Boone, still a teenager. I mean, obviously he's not, he's a young adult, but um really seeking approval. Like he's like, no, I'm gonna be, I want to volunteer and be a on sentry duty as well. To which Saeed kind of looked at him like, and of course
Okay.
Locke is like totally confirmed, like, yes, you are integral to our security. It's important. And you saw Boone smile afterwards because he got validated for his
Yeah.
worth. Yeah, he's still really struggling. Poor guy. And of course, then falls asleep. And I was like, no, don't fall asleep. Don't be the weak link.
Yeah.
And immediately woke up when he heard the trap. And of course, he's flat on his stomach, dog looking him in the face. Nice to see Vincent back, by the way.
Yeah.
He's good. No dead dogs on the show. Yay. But yeah, he's still trying, and feel bad for Boone because he's there, but you're not hearing him. He's
Right.
floating around. He's watching things, but he's not completely, he's not on the inside. He's not part of the planning process, which I thought was, interesting to see, Jack, Charlie, Locke, Saeed, kind of working together. And then you got Sawyer in there, and I'm still hopeful for Sawyer. Still hoping,
Yeah.
and Kate in there a little bit as well. So yeah.
And Boone, I think, was the first one to give any indication that Claire's return might not be what it seems. Because I think he was mentioning like he talks about how deep they were in the forest,
Yes,
Um,
it
and
does. Yeah.
like just wondering where she came from. And Locke's like, you know as much as me. And
Yeah.
so Boone is also the first one to question, oh my gosh, do you think Ethan's out there? And Locke, as straight as he ever is, he's just like, I sure hope not. Like
Yeah.
Locke seems to understand more than anyone like how dangerous Ethan is. And I think ever since Ethan took Claire, Locke seems to be the one that understands, hey, we cannot take Ethan lightly. We cannot go blindly
Yeah.
marching, hunting through the forest, or we'll just end up dead. So,
Yeah.
um, and I do want to point out, um, along with the music, camera work in this episode is so good. The cinematography with, you've mentioned before how great they do the sequences with campfires.
Yeah.
Um, like when they're standing watch and Saeed's got the fire behind him, he's got some light cast on him. Um, when they find Scott dead on the beach, and they're kind of panning quickly to, Boone and then Saeed, and the camera's kind of shaky a little bit. And it seems so
Yeah.
realistic in that moment, like you're right there with it. And so I think that also helped to amplify those intense moments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And even the explanation when Hurley comes up and I think is talking to Kate, and Hurley's like, well, could it be an accident? I just love how the writers, they can't necessarily be pretty gruesome to show broken neck and broken arms and fingers and all that type of stuff.
yeah.
Um, but the fact that, through the dialogue, Kate says, well, he had a broken neck and this and that. I am not sure that's really an accident. That's really scary. Just hearing
Yeah.
that, even, what this guy must have gone through, and how horrific his face off with Ethan, or if it was somebody else, just goes to show how dangerous these other this other person or persons could be. So,
And that sequence is kind of, I know you were just mentioning hopeful for Sawyer,
hmm.
but I really feel like this episode's a bad look for Sawyer. He's so callous. Like after Hurley asks that question and Kate says, "Oh, broken bones," like Sawyer comes on with like, "I guess Steve drew the short stick." Like, dude.
Yeah.
And then Hurley's like, "Dude, that's Scott." Um, and and then later when, you know, even when he's talking about giving Kate the fifth gun, five is better than four, he's so nonchalant about it. So it's in moments like that where I'm like, man, he doesn't necessarily talk down to anyone, but the way he's talking about things just doesn't seem as, you don't get that sincerity that we've seen in some of the other moments, which makes it again like that tug and pull of like, oh, I want to like you, but no, you're just so but he's clearly integral to this plan. Now, I will say he does give props to Jack by talking about making some comment about a knockout, which I think
Yeah, yeah, he did.
says a lot that he was willing to give Jack some props. So
Yep. And he didn't shoot anybody in the back, so mad props there too.
he didn't shoot and miss anyone. That's
That's
um,
true. I was like, oh, Jack, yeah, well, yeah, you brought up a sore subject,
it's like you are recruiting someone to use a gun, so
Yeah,
not necessarily a good moment for Jack either. Like,
no,
it's
no.
probably because Kate was there, and
Yeah, that
he's trying to
whole
like.
dynamic. Yeah.
And I was actually there's a couple of moments where I was wondering why isn't this person here?
Oh,
Well,
like
one,
when?
I was wondering, well, why wasn't Kate initially considered?
I wondered
Um,
that too.
because eventually she does get a gun, so why wasn't she considered first over Sawyer? Because everyone trusts Kate more than Sawyer. And then the other scene was when Charlie is talking with Jack, Locke, and Saeed about the potential of Claire's return and what that means. But then when Ethan returns and threatens Charlie and everyone else, it's just Charlie, Jack, and Locke. And I'm like, well, where's Saeed? He was in that initial conversation, but and
Yeah.
then so it just kind of and again, it's a big island. They could be it makes sense that probably characters are off doing stuff, but we don't get a lot from Kate and Saeed in this episode or Sawyer.
No,
Uh,
we got a little bit of Jun and Sun, and I think they were in there to kind of bring up and build the foundation of the fact that, again, kind of that thing that they're in their own bubble. And Charlie even says that, ignorance is bliss, because he believes that, Jin can't understand him anyway. Although, Charlie apparently has made efforts because he does say, I think he says hello to Jin in Korean, and he responds back. So,
he says something, yeah.
yeah. And the fact that in this episode, we actually have, no, I think they've done it before, but not all the time will they actually translate in the closed captioning what Jin and Sun if they're talking together. But in this case, they were. And Jin is trying to understand like what's going on. Sun is trying to like keep under wraps that she totally knows everything that's going on
Yeah.
and says, well, Claire's fine. Yep, the baby is fine. I think we're okay. But it was interesting that Jen understands that language barrier is a problem because all he knows is what he's seen. I mean, he's the fisherman. He goes out, he fishes, he comes back. That's his daily routine, it seems like, is the impression that I'm getting. While Sun is doing, the farming and helping with, homeopathy type stuff when they don't have medicine. So it's interesting that Charlie makes this observation, and I'm sure we're going to get some sort of payoff down the road regarding that. But I thought that was actually interesting between amnesia as a way to not know about things or know your past to, struggling with your past and then having, at least those two not speaking English because of course Sun's being able to speak and understand English isn't wide known yet. We know two people know, but not everybody else, and her husband's still, I think, in the dark
Yeah.
about that as well. So it is interesting that, because it's a foreign language, Charlie's like, oh, you don't have to be in on all the decisions or understand the dangers or anything like that. But I think that all that stuff can transcend languages. So I think that was a little bit naive on Charlie's part, because they should be making efforts to include them or to try to explain, to help them so that they are part of the decision-making process when, you know, they talk when uh, Jack, Charlie, and Locke are talking about who should know about the threat. And initially, while Locke's saying only a few, he concedes, which I thought was actually nice because you get kind of that brainstorming a solution because, you know, Locke initially says, well, we'll tell a few people, we'll have them stand guard, and we'll move everybody up to the cave. And then as Jack's like, yeah, yeah, let's move everybody to the caves. And then somebody brings up, well, you know what? What if there's more than one? We'll be sitting ducks up there. So you get to see that process unfold, which I think is also very interesting in this episode.
Yeah. Going back to Jen, I really liked seeing like his concern when Claire returns and he asks Son if, thinks she's going to be okay. and he also asks about the baby.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just and so in tying back that conversation where Charlie's like, "Oh, how nice it must be that you can protect Sun and not have to worry about anything else." I mean, it's clear that Jen is concerned. And
Yeah.
clearly you're spot on. Like he recognizes the language barrier. Um, and I know Hurley in a previous episode mentioned that there was a rumor that Jen could understand English, but this
Hmm.
episode kind of made it seem like no, that doesn't seem like that would be an accurate thing. Because he tells Son like I don't know how do I know anything? Like I only know what
Yeah.
I can see. So and I do like that he was the one that kind of recognized that there was a noise in the jungle first, um, which kind of makes me wonder if that's just he just has great hearing, or maybe if that's because of his, prior work with Son's father being kind of like attuned to things.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate learning some more about Son and Jin as we've moved on. In this episode, let's jump into the first question that we normally talk about with as far as favorite or most interesting scene. Is
Yeah.
there any one or a few that stood out for you in this episode?
Oh my gosh.
It's like last week, I wrote down I had I think five or six I was trying to grapple between.
Oh man. There are so many. I think the real standout is probably I'm gonna say when Jack clocks Ethan pretty good. And then just that whole scene as you can feel the adrenaline in the space and how they're trying to diffuse the bomb that's going on
Yeah,
because everybody's got a beef with this guy. And it seems like, you know, everybody's ramping back down, things are calming down. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And you see that it's Charlie with the gun, and he's done pretty good gripping on Ethan's chest. I'd have to say that's quite the standout moment for me. Just how I'm like, who the heck did that? And then you see that it's Charlie, and it's like, whoa, there's a lot more to Charlie than what we know. And we know that he has gotten into some bad stuff. We haven't seen him handle a gun before. So what
yeah.
else is there about him as, Charlie the junkie, and what was he getting into in the past that he's, now on the island? So I would say that's probably one of the big standout. There's others, but I keep going back, I think, to that one because I was so surprised that it was Charlie, um, and how really wondering how he felt in that moment of killing somebody and wondering, has he done that before?
Yeah.
To what depths did he sink when he was a junkie? Um, I guess probably the the other scene was the various chat up scenes in the flashbacks, which I thought were cute. I thought they were well written. And I like the banter back and forth, uh, that Charlie had with the ladies. I thought was really quite good. So I'd have to say kind of those, as a balance to such an adrenaline soaked climax that's happening in the jungle with the rain coming down and the thunder and all that.
And that scene with Ethan, we've talked about Lost, how there's this kind of mystical element
Hmm.
ab about the island or the show in general. And in that moment, Sawyer is the one he's pointing the gun at Ethan and he says, "Can somebody now tell me who or what this guy is?" Which I thought was a pretty interesting statement because it almost gives credence that maybe Ethan is not, or maybe he's like otherworldly because he's like this freak of nature to a degree where he kind of, you know, previously beat down on Jack and he was able to abduct two people. And so I just thought that was an interesting choice of words to be used
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah, I seen how much it takes to take Ethan down. I see him as kind of like maybe alien, although when he was shot, it was red blood. Not that that means anything. But I got to thinking that, well, if he is not some sort of android, then he is maybe a superhuman. Like, they tell you, oh, I think, like sometimes when people are so amped up on adrenaline or drugs that they have superhuman strength. So
Yeah.
I wonder if Ethan is the type that has been almost genetically altered in some way, since the people that were on the island before them with Danielle, the French woman, they were all scientists. So you have to kind of wonder, did they discover something? We still don't exactly know why they were there initially anyway. Um, so there's a lot of that. And then of course I go back to the comic. There's a lavatory, there was a purple alien, there was a polar bear, so I'm kind of thinking like back to what did we see in the comic book, you
Yeah,
know,
and it's interesting to
elements
know.
in
All
that.
right, well, we saw the polar bear.
Yep, a couple of
Like, what
times.
else from that comic are we going to see
Yeah.
appear? So, it's definitely interesting to see how they are tying things back around to different
Hmm.
moments in the show, and particularly the comic book.
Yeah.
Um, I think what's crazy is I don't even know if I
Did you write one
mentioned that.
down?
Um, so I have on my like list of potential scenes. I don't even know if I listed that scene with Ethan and being shot, which is ridiculous. There's so many things, things that I haven't mentioned, um, that I'll point out. Um, the conversation with Jack, where he's showing Locke the guns, and Locke's like, "Oh, you've been holding out on us," or something like that, or and Jack hands him a gun, and he's just like, I assume you know how to handle this." And there's like a hesitation there for a second, and Locke just takes it and is just like pulls the clip back or pulls the I don't know guns. He he pulls the chamber back, he pulls the clip down, puts it back in, loads it, does a little eye test, and then he just like kind of smiles at Jack. And it's like, how far does his level of experience and knowledge? I mean, we were talking about video games offline before chatting here, and Locke
Mhm.
seems like he's been leveled up many, many
Yeah.
times. So, um, and just the grin that he gives, he kind of puts the gun on his shoulder and he's just smiling. Um, so I thought that was interesting. Um, I also will say it was kind of heartbreaking when Charlie admits to Lucy and her father that Drive Shaft is basically dead. And it almost sounds like he's coming to realizing that as he's talking to them. So that was hard to see. Um, and some of the other things that I put, I'm going to point out, um, I'm going to go in a completely different way.
Mhm.
I'm going to say my favorite or most interesting moments. There are three scenes in the show where they are just of the sky. and they're all with the sun being covered with clouds. So you see
Mhm.
some light coming through, sometimes you don't. The first two scenes, very ominous music. It's almost leading right before the storm or before an attack. And then the third one, after Ethan is killed, it almost his image kind of fades away into this new sky where light is beaming through, but the music is a little more not upbeat, but it's a little maybe a little more hopeful.
Mhm.
And I just found that very interesting to kind of match the tempo of the show and what's happened with what we're seeing in the sky. Um, so I thought that was really interesting. Um, because I do think the show does a really good job at um, matching music to the scene. Um, and initially, when I saw it, I was like, that's so odd for them to do that because I don't think they've really hyper focused on the sky like that in such a way, but they do it a few times in this episode.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe it was a bit of foreshadowing with the storms approaching to then the oh, everything's better now that Ethan's dead
Mhm.
to a degree. So I just thought that was so I'll go with that as my most interesting scenes because I'll tie them together because they're I feel like the creators are kind of using that as a additional tool to amplify the show.
Yeah, and I've noticed a few times that they've had some, lovely shots of the ocean and, the setting sun. Um, as far as like time going by, we now know that it's been about a month that they've been on the island. So, that's helpful, keeping track because we're discussing episode 15, but they're at about a month versus us, 2 weeks, you know, or
Yeah, and Claire's been gone for almost 2 weeks, which seems crazy.
yeah, it's weird, but she's actually, I think she's been gone, what, actually one. I'm trying to remember because it's almost a month. So yeah, I think they were like a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. It's hard to keep track. And I think that that's part of, the allure of Lost is that you as an audience is also lost,
Yeah.
in such many different ways. Obviously, Lost means a lot of different things on this show.
Um, Another scene I want to point out. I
Mhm.
really like the end scene because after we see Charlie be told in flashback that he'll never take care of anyone, you flash back or you go back to the present and you see Jen laying with Son after she's cared for him in his wound. You see Shannon take care of Saeed's arm because I guess he
Yeah.
must have injured his arm. And you see kind of Hurley and Jack walk away after giving glances to Charlie, and then Claire comes up to him, to try to tell, remember peanut butter, and for some reason, and she's kind of trying to understand, I guess, Charlie's viewpoint for lying to her earlier in the episode, and she says she wants to trust him. So I don't know if she at that point had decided to go back and read her diary, and maybe that's why she kind of, or maybe she recognizes that, Charlie did what he did for her, in killing Ethan. So I thought that scene was a really well done scene to where Charlie is by killing Ethan, it's his way of kind of, I guess, breaking that curse of not being able to ever take care of anyone.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the writers really do a fantastic job at like just coming full circle with some things. And I know there's a million questions that we have uh, with this show, but this is so much fun to kind of explore, and even the episodes that kind of like, oh, I have to remember to take a breath because the scenes are so get me so hyped up.
Yeah.
Um, but the stories are so interesting. Now I don't like Charlie's past of trying to take advantage of Lucy and who else, however many other women he took advantage of. Um, that's definitely something I don't like to see. But hopefully those all stay in the past and we
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
good Charlie that we like and adore and
yeah,
uh
yeah. That was really hard. I would have to say, watching this episode and just how painful it was to go through those memories with him and how hard to struggle through past mistakes. Because I think that, he was probably starting to turn a corner. And the fact that Lucy and her father were talking to him like, an equal, they weren't talking down to him or anything like that. Um, I think Charlie could have been on a good trajectory if he hadn't had Tommy in his life that was like, let's make the score so we can, take our drugs and not
yeah,
have to worry about anything, you know. So yeah, I don't really want to see too much more of Charlie's past. It hurts the heart to watch those and to see, him so off the rails when he's such a sweet person, um, that's coming off of the drug addiction and, is learning to find himself,
yeah,
and I think redeem himself in his own eyes, that he can do this and he can do that. Um, you know, w- People lie, they lie sometimes for, the reason that they feel it's going to protect somebody. I mean, I get that. I understand that that's what he was trying to do. Um, but sometimes you just can't. You can't protect everybody.
yeah. Um, yeah. Is there, well, speaking of Charlie, uh, is he or is there someone else in the episode that you would consider your favorite or most interesting?
Hmm. Kind of feel like, when they're the focus, you want to try to find somebody else that you that kind of do a bit in the episode. Um, so I would say for the top contenders, it would have to be Charlie. Um, Claire, I think, a little bit in there. And then, of course, Locke and Jack are kind of like my top. Um, I guess I'll just stick with Charlie,
Okay.
'cause I do think we see a lot. We get to see more of what he's struggling with, the fact that it's almost like he's kicked the addiction, but he's got to be able to continue to work on that path and kind of go through the 12 steps.
Yeah.
So I do feel that, part of reconciling why you got on drugs is reconciling and coming to terms and finding forgiveness in what you've done in your past. So I feel that he's working on his 12 steps, um, and learning from the past and trying to make better decisions, you
Yeah.
know, um, and facing up to when he doesn't make a right decision, talking about it, um, and asking forgiveness and trying to make sure that that relationship or friendships can continue to grow and blossom, and be healthy. Um, so I'll go with Charlie.
Okay.
What about you?
Um,
You can't pick
um,
Charlie now.
no, that's fine.
No, I'm
I
teasing.
actually, I think I probably unfairly didn't put Charlie on my list because those scenes were so hard to watch,
Yeah.
and knowing that he was making decisions based on wanting to get his next fix. So that was that. Those were hard to see, and him trying to manipulate Lucy. So I didn't put him up there. I've been debating between
Mm-hmm.
Locke and Jin were my top two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Claire and Kate, because Claire willing to put herself in danger, for the greater good, I think
Yep.
says a lot about her. You know, Kate is the one who says, "Hey, maybe we should use the guns." And not that I'm
Yep.
advocating for it, but she mentioned that prior to Scott being killed. And then once Scott was killed, that's when Jack approaches Locke with the guns. So I
Yep.
think, Kate's showing some, thinking ahead to try to, and I understand Jack, he says, I don't want to put guns in untrained hands, and that makes sense.
Totally makes
Um,
sense.
but you're dealing with the same group of people when you initially said no to when you said yes. So nothing changed in that moment. Um, I really
Especially
do like,
giving Sawyer a gun, given, all the ramifications around that and the history, recent history with Sawyer and the fact that they give him a gun. So, I mean, I think that shows some trust,
yeah,
that he's going to step up and, you know, put the group ahead of his own personal gain.
yeah. And I even thought of Hurley because he has a very small role. Um, but I think his admission of like, oh, dude, sorry I kept calling you Steve. And even Sawyer called him Steve. But Hurley's the one who gives a little eulogy,
Hmm.
um, which almost makes him, he kind of bringing people together. That seems to be something that Hurley is good at doing, even in the bad moments. Um, I will say it's definitely between Locke and Jen. I love Locke's ability to calm Jack and Charlie to try to think of a greater plan. Um, I th because I think I've said a Locke quite a few times, and he's like my favorite. I think I'm gonna go with Jen. I like seeing the good of Jin. Like the first episode when he was like slapping Sun's hand, or first or second episode, he's slapping Sun's hand and telling her to button up, and obviously that's awful. Um, but he also has this side where he is trying to like care for everyone, provide. He clearly had understands that there's something wrong. There are problems more than just crash landing on an island. Um, and shows concern for Claire and the baby. Maybe because I'm a parent, I'm a sucker for that appeal. Um, and I also really liked him being super aware in the jungle when Charlie's yapping away at him, and
Yeah,
Jin's just smiling and walking along, but he hears that swirling noise, and unfortunately he gets knocked out.
yeah,
But the fact that he has that awareness um, makes me think, man, if he could communicate with everyone else, I feel like he'd be such a, valid, useful person. And because I feel like the group needs as many hands on deck to help survive the island or get
yeah.
rescued or whatever. Um, so I liked seeing these moments from Jin. So he'll be my favorite. Uh, yeah. Man, I'm so interested to see. And what's great about this, I know you mentioned earlier, like when rewatching this one, you didn't remember the episode as much, and I was the
Mhm.
same way. And so even though I've seen this show a few times, I can come onto an episode and be like, I don't remember
Yeah.
like most of it. Um, so it's great to kind of have that feeling of being surprised by what's happening. And I completely forgot Claire had amnesia. Didn't even think that that was going to be a thing. And then it popped
Yeah.
up. I was like, oh crap. I- So I'm already looking forward to the next episode. And you know, I will say, like my wife and my kids, when we have sit down and have dinner together, it's been a lot fewer and far between this fall season because it's been busier. But we talk about favorite things of the week or favorite things of the day.
Hmm.
And these conversations are always on that list. This is so fun. I love that we're doing this.
Me too.
Um, and I'm trying to, I don't even know what the next episode is. So I'm already looking forward to it.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. I could do a little sneak peek. Episode 16 is called Outlaws and will feature
Gotta be Sawyer,
Sawyer.
right? Okay.
Yeah, you know it. Of course. Yes, Sawyer is up to bat, so to speak. So
Okay.
we'll get more about him. So Sawyer is a an intriguing character to our audience, and they want to know more, then definitely tune back in next week when the episode will feature him and his flashbacks. So we'll get to learn a bit more. We know he's had altercation with the law because we did see him a couple of weeks ago um, in the same police station that Boone is in, trying
Right.
to report or get a wellness check from the police. So, to which he was told they're not the dating police. I thought that was
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, are there any other moments from this episode that you want to bring up before we sign off?
funny. I think generally the feeling that, oh crap, Claire has amnesia. Oh crap, Ethan is shot dead by Charlie. Two things that could have helped us to have a better understanding of the island is obliterated unless Claire does eventually um, regain her memories and she's able to uh, give the survivors additional information that they don't currently have, and by extension us the audience, because we're very much in the dark. you know um, the fact that we get the flashbacks but the survivors don't, and obviously they're getting the experience, and the fact that we don't know where they're at 24/7. So like you said, how, oh, it's interesting that Kate wasn't involved in this conversation, and then later that Kate and Saeed were not involved in another conversation. I think you know definitely keeps us off step, and keeps us
Um,
kind of lost because we don't know where they're at. How come they're not there? And I think that was a great observation. The only other thing that I would say, and it's more to belabor a humorous point uh, that you brought up, and that is, oh, and I even, yes, here we go. When Charlie does his presentation at the office, and he's obviously out of his element. The suit is a couple of sizes too big. He's sweating. He's obviously a rocker. And there he's in this kind of professional office, with others sitting at the conference table. He messes up the papers. All he has to do is show how fast the copier can print. That's my takeaway. And then he fumbles, he pushes the button, nothing happens. And all
yeah.
that came to mind was he only had one job.
Yeah.
And then he gets sick and he opens the copier and vomits. I was just like, yeah, that's priceless.
Oh. Poor Charlie.
I'll end on that
Oh,
note because it was such a tense-filled episode, like they all are. So ending on a kind of humorous moment, I will leave it at that. How about for you?
no, I was able, I just went through and all the highlights that I had on my document we've touched on. So, I will just say to everyone watching, thank you. Um, if you leave a comment, please be mindful of Michelle and just write spoiler ahead if you're talking about future episodes. But tell us about your most interesting scene and what character you think was the best in this episode. Um, and yeah, this has been another great chat, Michelle.
Yes, it has. I'm looking forward to our next one because I got a little bit of a soft spot for Sawyer, especially since I've seen him in some other stuff since he was in Lost. Um, so anxious to get more on his story. He's such an interesting character. Um, I'm very curious why he continues to be kind of on the outside, and what is driving him so much that he's not a team player. He
Yeah.
definitely reads team with an I in there somewhere. So it'll be interesting what we learn next week.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. Obviously, comments down in the box below. And I would say that if you even have general impressions of the episode, include those as well. We'd love to engage in conversation and kind of revitalize this incredible series that is in its 20th anniversary. I don't know anybody else that's making a big deal, but I think it's cool that we're rewatch or you rewatching, me watching for the first time, and having this bigger discussion of such a seminal piece of television history.
Totally.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.